and welcome to my examination of Missing 411, Eastern United States. Today we will be continuing the Pennsylvania cases where we left off last time. First up, we have Anna Pearl Thorpe. Anna, who was 2 years old at the time, went missing on May 5th, 1950, from Dunbar, Pennsylvania. Anna was playing outside alone when her mother heard her scream. She rushed outside, but Anna was missing. She searched, then called law enforcement. 24 hours into the search, Anna was found alive and in, quote, almost perfect condition considering the amount of terrain she had covered, close quote, about 3 miles from her home under a blackberry bush. She was naked except for one shoe. Her sweater and dress were found on the ground near her. On May 7th, the Los Angeles Times claimed that she got over 10 picket, barbed wire, and stone fences to get where she was found. This case is just 10 miles and 26 months separate from Donald Collier, and there are simply too many similarities to ignore. Let's review. This case falls in the same pitfall as many others before it, where Pilates simply cannot resist comparing two very different cases and claiming that they are the same. Hoosier Lake is 21 miles by air from Dunbar, more than twice the distance that he quotes. Further, Anna was found and Donald was not. Anna screamed and Donald didn't. Donald was in an unfamiliar area and Anna was at her home. Anna was found to be unmolested and the police were satisfied, saying that she wandered off. Donald has stronger implications of kidnapping or other foul play. What similarities is he referencing? He says 26 months to make it sound like it was about the same time, but another way of putting it is more than 2 years separate. There is simply no meaningful parallel here. Up next is Jackie Copeland. Jackie, who was 2 years old at the time, went missing on May 14th, 1950, from Pleasantville, Pennsylvania. At 1 p.m., Jackie's sister told their father that he was missing. A search was launched by that evening. Bloodhounds could not or refused to search. The next morning, Jackie was found alive and a little scratched up in a swamp 2 miles away, peering at the searchers from around a tree. The swamps were deemed impassable by search coordinators. Jackie was interviewed and gave a fantastical recounting of his adventure. He saw something peering at him from behind a big tree. When he approached, the creature scampered into the brush. He recounted in child talk his adventure in an awful blackness, peopled by a great throbbing giant, and a friendly tree, and wild animals howling in the distance, and the unfamiliar shouts of strangers prowling nearby. Pilates calls this recounting a, quote, very sobering narrative of what might possibly be occurring with the plethora of missing children outlined in this book, close quote. Without commenting too much on that last point, let's review. We have the common point of the bloodhound claim being completely incorrect. Bloodhounds in fact caught the trail, but lost it due to the environment. They hardly refused to search. For point 5, it was about 1 mile away, not 2. And most significantly, I didn't see any reference in the 30 articles that I read that called the swamps impassable. In fact, I ran a search for the word impassable and Jackie Copeland for all of 1950 worldwide, and I could not find a single article that even had the word impassable on the same page as Jackie Copeland's story. To put it in perspective, I was able to pull up 145 results for Jackie Copeland in May of 1950 alone. Pilates does not reference a specific article that made this claim, but given that the searchers were able to walk through it just fine and there was machinery on the site, I think it's pretty fair to say that the swamp was not, in fact, impassable. Emma Bowers. Emma, who was 5 years old at the time, went missing on July 22nd, 1953, from Mill Run, Pennsylvania. She was a deaf-mute, frail and small for her age. She lagged behind her friends as they went to visit a spring. Her mother noticed that she was missing and called for help. Bloodhounds could not or would not search. Rain fell shortly after she disappeared. 60 hours after she went missing, Emma was found sitting on a ledge, eating wild berries, about 2 miles away from where she went missing. She was naked and had thousands of scratches all over her body, and her feet were raw, but she was in otherwise good condition. Paulides says that her case was only included because she could not talk, which made her fit the profile, as most children can't say what happened to them. Let's review. Emma had wandered off and gone missing before. As for bloodhounds not searching, it's a bit of a stretch considering that bloodhounds weren't even used in this case. Paulides often points out when children are missing clothing, even though this is a pretty common occurrence and even noted in search manuals. However, what he fails to mention is that when she went missing, she was only wearing underwear to begin with. Further, witnesses at her discovery stated that these had been ripped off of her by the briars. She also suffered from malnutrition and exposure. As for the last point, I just want to highlight a pattern that has become obvious to me the more that I read. When a child doesn't speak, it's suspicious because the child refuses to talk about what happened to them as if it was traumatic or worthy of keeping a secret. But when they do say weird things, he highlights it and says, hey, we should believe everything that they say. But when they speak and they give very clear, ordinary answers, he fails to mention it. Up next is Fred Tookie Holmes. Fred, who was 23 months old at the time, went missing on May 25th, 1955, from Grahamsville, New York. Fred was playing in the yard while his mother tended the garden. She lost sight for him for 10 or 15 minutes and then realized that he was gone. When she couldn't find him, authorities were called and a search was launched. Heavy rain fell in the area the first night that he was missing. Bloodhounds could not or would not track. His parents passed polygraph tests, and he was never found. Let's review. We don't have to wonder this time about the bloodhounds because it is specifically mentioned in several of the news articles that the bloodhounds were unable to track due to the heavy rain in the area. Otherwise, this case is, from what I found, correctly reported. Up next is Candida Candy Streeter. Candida, who was 2 years old at the time, went missing on October 3rd, 1957, from Pottstown, Pennsylvania. She was playing in the front yard with her brother Mitty when Mitty came inside and told his mother that Candida was not outside. Her parents searched for a time and then called the authorities. Bloodhounds entered the woods near the house but could not or would not track. In the following morning, a farmer's daughter found Candida standing near the chicken coop. The state police did not identify the location but stated it was in the general area. Paulides asks, quote, "Why didn't Candy walk to a farmhouse where she saw light? Why would she stay by a dirty chicken coop instead of just going to a farmhouse and seek warmth and assistance?" Close quote. Luckily, we can answer this question in the review. From what I found, she was not outside, but in fact was left inside alone in front of a TV. The police did say where they found her. It was the Barnes Foundation estate, which was a little bit more than a mile away. A place, by the way, where she had been known to visit before when she had gone missing. And as for the final point, let's answer Paulides' question. The farmhouse was not occupied at the time. Plus, let's look at what Paulides is really complaining about here. Why didn't this 2-year-old make rational decisions? An odd thing to ask of a 2-year-old. Karen Cooney. Karen, who was 15 years old at the time, went missing on July 8, 1968, from Corey, Pennsylvania. Karen was asked by her mother to do some chores in the backyard. After a time, she screamed. When her brother and mother rushed over, she was gone. Authorities were called and a search was launched. 27 hours into the search, a helicopter pilot saw Karen walking down the banks of Leisure Lake, 3 miles away. She was dazed when met by searchers. At the stay in the hospital, she reported that she was chased from the house by a big man with a knife. He chased her for a long time through the woods until eventually she fell asleep. The case summary does spend some opinion and theory around this, but none of it's interesting and we're about to disprove it anyway, so we'll just skip it. In review, while she was dazed, I suppose, she was doing a little bit more than just passively walking down the bank. She jumped up and down and waved her arms at the helicopter pilot to flag him down. As for the story with the man with the big knife, well, that's what she told her mother. When she was first questioned by police, she told them the truth. She had been, quote, nervous and high-strung lately, and decided to take a walk in the woods to get away from it all, close quote. The police went on to say that she screamed when she tried to cross an electrified fence. The story about the man with the big knife that she told her mother was completely discounted. Quote, her disappearance was deliberate, a trooper said. She took her time. She could have come out of there yesterday, but she didn't. She took her little religious book out there with her, close quote. Duane Scott. Duane, who was 31 at the time, went missing on July 27, 1978 from Camp Tree Farm, Pennsylvania. Duane was frail, requiring medication to control his ability to walk. He attended a dance at Camp Tree Farm, which is known to hold events for the disabled. He was seen at the dance, but afterwards nobody could locate him. Law enforcement and volunteers searched for him for almost 2 weeks, but could not locate him. 94 days after he went missing, 2 hunters found Duane's decomposing body on a hillside about 2 miles away from where he went missing. The coroner confirmed that there were no broken bones, serious cuts, or bruises, so he could not determine the cause of death. The area where he was found had sharp, thorny bushes and was too steep for him to reach, according to his family. The camp director stated that, quote, the man either walked the miles to get there, or he got there some other way, close quote. Let's review. Duane was mentally handicapped, suffering from an intellectual disability. He wasn't noted to have any physical disabilities, as one article notes that he enjoyed canoeing and swimming. In fact, the only medication I see referenced is for his mental handicap, not a physical one, and doctors said that he could function without it. Also, he had a history of being easily disoriented with a very bad sense of direction, and he had gotten lost before. The coroner was able to determine cause of death. He determined it to be exposure. And lastly, let's look at this very out of context quote. The camp director said that he either beelined there through the brush, or he walked by the road for about 3 miles, then went into the woods, therefore avoiding the bushes, or he got there some other way. John Dabkowski and Gabriel Minarcin. These are represented separately in the book, but they went missing at the same time, same place, so we'll be covering them together. John, who was 11, and Gabriel, who was 10, went missing on January 14, 1982, from Tarentum, Pennsylvania. The two went missing on the way from John's house to Gabriel's, which was 3 blocks away. There was some belief that they fell into an iced-over river, since tracks were found nearby, but that was never borne out, as no ice break was ever located. And that's it. Honestly, these two sort of remind me of the cases in earlier chapters with how sparse the information is, but let's review anyway. Specifically, the last point. There's some very strong evidence for the theory that they fell into the iced-over river. While it's true that their bodies were never recovered, there were tracks leading into the river but not back out. Further, a neighbor also reported seeing 2 boys playing on the iced-over river. Further, bloodhounds led searchers to an opening in the ice. You know, that ice break that was supposedly never located. The river could not be searched at the time since it was so cold that it was too dangerous even for certified divers. Emerson Carbaugh. Emerson, who was 64 years old at the time, went missing on November 11, 1985, from Robertsdale, Pennsylvania. He was on a hunting trip with his brother-in-law, Ralph. They split up hunting turkeys. He was armed with a shotgun. Emerson did not show up for the meeting to go back home. His brother-in-law searched through the night with another hunter, but found nothing. State police searched after that, but did not find him or any of his property. In review, I couldn't find any contradicting information. His wife held a memorial service for him in 1992. Michael Joe Milanowski. Michael, who was 37 at the time, went missing on October 24th, 1996 from Gaines, Pennsylvania. He rented a cabin in the woods to attend a conference. He slept there the first night and then called a roommate to advise him that he made it safely there. A concern was raised when the cleaner noted that he had not returned to his room. On November 2nd, his car was found parked at a trail access point of a nearby park. Inside, there was a pair of hiking boots, his cell phone, a backpack. He was never seen again, and his bank accounts and social security number were never used. In review, there's a slight spelling error for his last name. For the second point, this is either wrong or just missing information. He called his roommate and explained that he was going to take a hike and photograph the canyon, explaining why he went where he did. His car was found before November 2nd. I've seen it reported October 30th and October 27th. As far as I can tell, he has not yet been found. Charles Belts. Charles, who was 56 years old at the time, went missing on June 7th, 2005 from Clear Creek State Park, Pennsylvania. Gladys notes that there are many contradicting versions of his disappearance, but the most credible is that he was last seen in the camp where his 1992 Plymouth Caravan was found. Law enforcement searched for 2 weeks in a 200-mile radius. No further information is available. In review, I must say yes. Information is very sparse in this case, and I'm not sure why. The only information I can find is what's parroted here, and there's no other sources listed for those. And with that, we have finally reached the end of the Pennsylvania chapter. Thank you for listening, and next time we will pick up with West Virginia. Until then, take care.